You may think all residency programs pay similarly after adjusting for cost of living, and that prestigious names justify financial sacrifices. I believed that too, until I analyzed data from hundreds of residencies nationwide. What I discovered was shocking. While most resident salaries barely keep up with inflation, some programs now offer six-figure compensation packages. The differences are extreme. An intern at LA General takes home more than $15,000 extra after expenses than many counterparts nationwide, including at Harvard. Stay till the end to learn which programs offer the best total compensation today, the hidden benefits worth over $20,000 annually, and how location dramatically impacts your purchasing power more than most realize. Let me show you what I call the 20-year pay cut, something that most residency programs probably hope you won't discover. Resident salaries have been shrinking for 2 decades. First, let's talk about what I call the salary illusion. Between 2000 and 2025, the average PGY1 salary has decreased by about 0.8% after adjusting for inflation. This comes directly from the trend analysis based on the Brewster et al. Study in JAMA Network Open 2023, updated with inflation data from the Federal Reserve through March 2025. What looks like annual raises on the surface, 3.8% on average in 2025, is actually a pay cut when adjusted for inflation. However, according to Brightmind's 2025 salary budget projections, these increases don't fully offset cumulative inflation. In 2000, the average PGY1 earned $36,000, which in today's terms is about $62,800. 2025's average of $62,300 means real negative growth in 25 years. This calculation uses the US Bureau of Labor Statistics CPI data through Q1 of 2025. But here's where it gets worse, what I call the housing squeeze. While salaries stagnated, housing costs exploded 22% faster than inflation since 2000. In Brewster's original study, it found a 17.8% difference between housing inflation and overall inflation through 2022. Since 22, with housing prices exploding, the Federal Reserve Housing Index shows that this gap has widened to about 22% in 2025. What that means is that housing inflation has gone up by about 22% more than overall inflation. The take-home is that 62% of residents are now officially rent-burdened, meaning they're paying more than 30% of their income to housing. This gap continues to widen each year, creating unprecedented financial strain. Only 17% now offer housing stipends. According to the ACGME's 2025 benefit survey, this is up from 13.7% in 2023, but is still woefully inadequate. But there's a secret revolution happening in resident compensation, if you know where to look. Let's talk about what I discovered about location, which matters more than you think. The program that pays you the most on paper might leave you the poorest in practice. Here's what I call the cost of living divide. Raw salary differences between regions can exceed $35,000 nominally for PGY1s in 2025. The highest nominal salaries that we found for interns was in California, where at Stanford, interns earn $96,700, and in Boston, where at MGH, interns earn $82,500. These numbers come from Stanford Medicine's neurology department website and Mass General Brigham's GME resources page. Some of the lowest nominal salaries of the programs that we looked at came from the South and the Midwest, $62,400 at Emory and $65,700 at Mayo. But after adjusting for cost of living, these differences nearly disappear. To explain, let's talk about the housing factor. It's the single biggest variable in your financial equation as a resident. In San Francisco, average one-bedroom rent exceeds $3,100 per month, or about $37,200 per year. This is according to the Zillow Rent Index for Q1 of 2025. In Rochester, Minnesota, where the Mayo Clinic is located, the average one-bedroom rent is only $1,150, or $13,800 per year. This $23,400 difference means a $65,700 Mayo salary equals roughly $89,100 in San Francisco. Your rent will be the single biggest factor in your financial comfort during residency. And speaking of hidden advantages, let me show you the single biggest compensation boost that never shows up in the salary number. Let me reveal what I call the $20,000 benefit most residents never know about. Some residents are effectively earning $20,000 more than their peers at the same PGY level, without even realizing it. I call this the stipend revolution, and it's changing everything. Only 17% of programs offer housing stipends in 2025, but that number is rapidly growing. These annual stipends now range from $3,150 at a place like Montefiore to $13,600 at UCSF. At the Harvard MGH and Brigham Women's programs, they have a $10,000 a year cost of living stipend, which increased their total compensation by about 12% overnight. Depending on how the stipend is given, these may even be tax-free benefits, making their true value even higher. Now let's talk about what I call the meal money advantage. 31% of programs offer meal allowances beyond on-call coverage in 2025. According to the ACGME's 2025 benefit survey, this is up from 29% only 2 years before. UCLA provides $3,000 a year in meal credits, whereas LA General offers virtually free meals, which if you took advantage of for 365 days would be about $10,000 a year in free meals. Food stipends mean never having to grocery shop after a 28-hour call shift. This benefit alone can save residents $3,000 to $10,000 annually in living expenses. But what about those prestigious academic programs you've been dreaming about? Their compensation might surprise you. Let me bust a major myth I call elite doesn't mean wealthy. The most prestigious programs have historically paid the least, but that's changing dramatically. First, let's talk about the prestige tax myth. Traditional wisdom is that you should always accept lower pay for training as long as it comes at elite academic centers. What this meant historically is that residents at Harvard or Hopkins or Stanford earned less than their counterparts at nearby community hospitals. When I was at Harvard MGH, the joke was that our prestigious hospital badge was part of our compensation. This paradigm, however, is rapidly changing as top programs face recruitment pressure. Now let me show you what I call the elite hospital revolution. At the Harvard Mass General program where I trained, PGY1s now earn $82,500 as a base salary and a $10,000 stipend for housing. This brings their total compensation to about $92,500. This is from the Mass General Brigham's Graduate Medical Education Resources page, which was updated for 2024-2025. At Stanford, interns now earn $96,700 plus benefits, which is one of the first programs to hit 6 figures for total compensation. At UCSF, if you include their housing stipend, PGY1s now earn $92,300 per year. What this means is that many elite hospitals now often exceed community hospital compensation. This dramatic shift in elite program compensation didn't happen by accident. It's directly tied to the single biggest force reshaping resident salaries today. Let me show you what I call the union effect. The most financially successful residents today share one thing in common, and it's not their step scores. Let's look at the union impact by numbers. Unionized residency programs pay roughly $7,400 more annually than non-union counterparts. This comes from the October 2024 analysis published in PLOS One by Tiagi et al., which examined data from all internal medicine residency programs. And remember, since residency programs typically don't pay residents in different specialties different salaries, the IM residency program data is likely representative of all programs. So how quickly after residents unionize do you see an effect on salary? The results are nearly immediate. First-year union contracts typically deliver 10 to 20% immediate salary increases. In addition, union contracts guarantee structured raises that outpace inflation. The difference between stagnation and growth is collective bargaining power. But it goes far beyond base salary. Let me show you how. Unions often secure the most robust benefits packages as well. Those housing stipends that I talked about, between $3,000 and $13,600 annually at Montefiore, LA General USC, and UCLA, these all came in large part from unionization efforts. Childcare subsidies, most recently $2,625 at Montefiore, are rarely seen at non-union programs. These figures are typically adjusted upwards annually due to inflation. For example, at Montefiore, the original stipend was $2,500 in 2023. The total value difference in benefits between union and non-union programs averages $2,400 annually, according to the same PLOS One study. Membership at CIR, which is the largest house staff union in the country, has tripled since 2020 as residents organize nationwide. According to the CIR-SEIU's March 2025 membership report, this has shown significant acceleration in 2024. Stanford residents and fellows voted to unionize in 2022, and Harvard MGH and other elite programs are also facing unionization campaigns. Even non-union hospitals are raising pay to prevent unionization. MGH's $10,000 a year stipend is widely seen as a preemptive move against union organizing. But base salary is only the beginning. Let me show you the complete financial picture that determines your quality of life during residency. Let's talk about what I call beyond base salary. The biggest financial advantages in residency often don't show up in the salary number. First, let me explain the true compensation equation. This equates to base salary plus housing benefits plus food allowances plus education funds plus insurance value. For example, at LA General, the PGY1 salary appears low at $79,500 for base salary. However, add in $10,000 for housing, about $10,000 a year for food, $1,400 for education, and $2,500 in bonuses, the true value adds up to $103,400, making it competitive with top programs anywhere in the country. Next, there's the insurance advantage, which can be worth thousands. Family health insurance premiums vary by $5,000 to $10,000 annually between programs. This is based on the AAMC's 2025 Health Benefits Comparison Report. Some programs, like Stanford, cover 100% for residents and spouses and dependents. Stanford Medicine's neurology department website even goes so far as to highlight this as a major benefit for recruitment advantage. Other programs may require significant employee contributions for their own healthcare, up to $500 a month. This difference alone can be worth $30,000 over a 3-year residency. Finally, there are hidden financial factors that add up quickly. For retirement matching, for example, some programs offer 5 to 8% matches while others offer nothing. Stanford's 2024 union contract includes a 2% contribution plus 2% match confirmed on their benefits website. Some programs offering 0 weeks and others up to 12 weeks of paid leave. There are also differences in disability insurance coverage and licensing exam fee reimbursement. To understand how rapidly this landscape is changing, let me show you one hospital that's setting a new standard for resident compensation. Let me tell you about what I call the MGH effect. Mass General's compensation revolution is sending shockwaves through residency education. First, let's look at the historic shift. MGH PGY1 salaries had stagnated for years after adjusting for inflation, at about $68,000 a year. However, in 2023, there was a 15% base salary increase to $78,540. It's hard not to look at the unionization efforts, including Stanford's voting to unionize in 2022, and not think that there's something bigger at play. In 2025, they further increased the base salary to $82,500 for interns, plus maintained their $10,000 a year annual stipend for cost of living adjustments. The total effect is that there was a 35% compensation increase over just 2 years. Now, let me show you the ripple effect. Brigham and Women's Hospital matched the increase immediately. This is because both hospitals fall under the Mass General Brigham system and share the same compensation scale. In addition to that, the Harvard Beth Israel Deaconess program raised base compensation to $80,100 in 2025 to stay competitive. Then, across town, the Boston Medical Center boosted bonuses to compete. BMC's GME office increased their bonus structure to $4,500 by 2025 per their benefits page. Every program in Boston is now under pressure to match these new standards. This transformation, however, is most visible when we compare the traditional powerhouses on opposite coasts. Let's look at what I call East versus West, the coastal compensation revolution. California residents once earned the same as their East Coast peers. Now they're breaking the $100,000 a year barrier. First, let me show you the California surge. Including their housing stipend, Stanford PGY1s earn $96,700, giving interns annual compensation of $98,700 total. This figure comes from the Stanford Medicine's 2024-2025 salary scale, reflecting the 5% increase from September of 2024. UCSF interns earn $92,300 annually, including their housing stipend. At UCLA, PGY1s earn $93,800, including a $12,000 a year housing stipend and $3,000 a year for meals, bringing their total compensation to $96,800. Strong unionization has driven California to the national lead. Let's compare the Boston response. As I mentioned earlier, Harvard, MGH, and Brigham residents earn as PGY1s $82,500, plus, with their $10,000 a year cost of living stipend, they earn $92,500 annually. This has virtually eliminated the prestige discount at Harvard-affiliated hospitals. Additional benefits, including retirement, education funds, and healthcare, make packages comparable. And finally, the New York struggle. New York City hospitals historically are underpaid despite high cost of living. However, recent union victories are changing the landscape. At Montefiore in New York, resident union representatives recently negotiated a deal that includes an 18% salary increase, a $2,500 annual childcare allowance, a $3,000 housing stipend, and improved healthcare benefits. That said, New York programs still lag between California and Boston, creating recruiting challenges. But the numbers on paper don't tell the whole story. Let me show you where residents actually live most comfortably. Now let me show you what I call the real purchasing power map, which reveals how much money residents actually have left after paying for housing based on the latest 2025 data. The highest paid residents aren't necessarily the most financially comfortable. Let me show you why. I've compiled the most current data on base salaries, stipends, and actual housing costs to calculate how much money residents keep after paying rent in different cities. Then I've ranked them from highest to lowest net salary after housing. Looking at this 2025 data, several important trends emerge. First, LA General tops our list with over $70,100 remaining after housing costs. The combination of moderate base salary with generous housing and meal stipends totaling over $20,000 creates a substantial financial advantage, especially given Los Angeles' relatively moderate rent for a major metropolitan area. Their neighbor UCLA comes in at a close second with $67,400 remaining after housing. While they have the highest base salary of any program, that incorporates their housing stipend, and their additional meal allowance boosts their effective compensation. Stanford ranks third despite having the highest nominal salary. Their six-figure compensation once you include stipends is impressive, but Palo Alto's extremely high housing costs consume more of that income compared to LA residents. One thing I will note is that having gone to Stanford for medical school, I know that a lot of residents take advantage of the subsidized housing that's offered by Stanford. This highlights the fact that some programs reduce housing costs by offering subsidized housing, which isn't necessarily taken into account in these calculations. Perhaps most surprisingly, look at Cleveland Clinic ranked fourth. Despite having a base salary nearly $14,000 lower than Mass General Brigham, residents at Cleveland Clinic actually end up with more money after housing costs. This dramatically illustrates how cost of living can completely reshape the financial equation. Fifth, California programs now dominate the top positions. This represents a complete shift from just a few years ago when these programs lagged behind in net compensation. The combination of union negotiations and institutional responses has dramatically changed the financial landscape. Finally, there's now a clear stipend gap emerging between programs. Those that offer substantial housing subsidies have pulled away from those that don't, creating a financial advantage of $15,000 to $25,000 in take-home pay. Understanding this real purchasing power is critical to making an informed decision about your residency training. Now let me show you how to put all of this information together. Next, let's discuss a framework on how to make a well-rounded decision that considers both financial and educational factors. While financial considerations are important, they're just one factor in what should be a holistic evaluation of programs. First, here's the complete financial checklist. Base salary for all PGY years, including guaranteed raises, housing stipends or subsidized housing options, meal allowances and food benefits, education, book, conference funding, insurance coverage, especially family coverage costs, retirement benefits and matching, and parental leave policies. Remember, the program that scores highest overall financially may not lead in any single category. But equally important are the training factors that matter most. The things that you may want to consider are educational quality and case volume in your specialty, faculty mentorship and research opportunities, program culture and resident wellness, call schedules and work-life balance, geographic constraints like family needs or partner's career, fellowship match rates, and career outcomes. Remember, the best financial package means little if your training or quality of life suffers. Finally, here's my advice for making your final decision. Create a weighted rubric based on your personal priorities. Consider both short-term comfort and long-term career impact. Have honest conversations with current residents about compensation and training. And finally, factor in total compensation, not just base salary, when comparing programs. Remember, the ideal program maximizes both your educational and financial well-being. Understanding the complete picture of compensation gives you one more tool in your toolbox when making this critical career decision. The best programs recognize that supporting residents financially enables them to focus fully on becoming excellent physicians. Now that you understand how to maximize your residency compensation, your next big decision awaits. Which specialty will give you the best return on investment for your time? In my next video, I reveal the top 10 paying medical specialties per hour, where you'll discover which fields earn more than $200 or even $300 per hour, plus the hidden gems that offer the highest compensation with the lowest competition. After countless hours analyzing the data, I've uncovered insights that could completely change your career trajectory. Click now to see which specialties provide both the lifestyle and the compensation that aligns with your career goals.